So we're all plugged into this thing called the internet. And this internet is shoving us through different places all at the same time. So there's this collapsing of space and this bringing together of all of our time, all into like a concurrent now. For the most part, all of us are taken care of with regards to our survival instincts. We all kind of have food and shelter, most of us do. And so there's this excess of attention that we have to spend into these devices that connect us. And that excess of attention brings with us an excess of care. And so that care is always kind of feeling out through the internet, seeking something to land on. And so, for instance, what happened in Virginia was something violent happened. And violence is something that we can all care about very immediately. So we all kind of send our attention to this one spot where we all care about, and that care converges on this event. But what we're watching isn't just the event. What we're watching is actually reactions to the event, so that the event happens and it's recorded from all these different angles. And then we have people who are installed into this internet who we're all kind of paying attention to, and they tie that event and all those different angles of the event to a broader narrative. So they take all that noise and they reduce it into a signal. And then they send that signal out, and then that signal banks against other signals, so that you have this massive discussion happening that's propagating across all these different interpretations of event, all these different people applying their care to what happened, and then using their attention and their care and their intellect to kind of formulate how this all makes sense. But we have to really be careful when we're paying attention into these events, because there are these narratives underneath the surface that are always operating. And actually, if you look at what happened in Virginia, what you see is that there's these two narratives that are clashing. You have these groups of people who are adhering to different ideologies, and they finally make contact in the physical world. So they take all this nebulous, abstract stuff and they reduce it down to a physical event that, leads to death in this instance. But it was preceded by a whole bunch of shouting. And then that shouting and that death propagates more shouting and more potential violence. And so right now we're kind of at this huge buffet of information, and that which we end up caring about is that which is flavorful, that which gives rise to our passions, whether negatively or positively. And I think that what we need to start to develop is a way of dieting from certain sorts of rhetoric, to kind of not eat so much of that inflammatory material. Just like the organic revolution has happened in the physical world with our food, I think that we need to have like an organic revolution within our digital life, within our noetic and our emotive food, and to be more principled with what we pay our attention into. Because what we end up paying our attention into, it becomes a part of us. And eventually it does have an effect in the world. Or even if it doesn't for us, even if we personally can maintain that barrier between speech and action by promulgating more and more rhetorical speech, more and more passionate speech, eventually that's going to enter into the head of somebody who doesn't have that barrier, who's going to act on all these voices, is going to eventually need to exhaust that energy into the physical world. And so, in a way, I want to interpret on a large scale the tensions in America as owing to our junk food, our informational junk food. And if that is the case, then it's not the end of the world. If that is the case, then actually the end of the world is something else that we need to start to think about. And I think that the only way we're going to solve the end of the world is if we kind of give up our rabid devouring of the saltiest food on the table and actually start to treat each other in a more humane and inclusive way, in a truly inclusive way, and stop splitting each other into these different sectors that, by the very splitting up, cause tensions to arise that we end up subconsciously feeding on and promulgating more tension. So that's just one idea for you to think about.